Hello and welcome to my channel. This is going to be my contribution to the New Year collaboration organised by Tracy at Mini Scenes GB. I couldn't decide what to do, and I actually wasn't going to join this collaboration initially. But somebody else in the Discord asked the question. Well, they didn't really ask a question, they just said they didn't think they could join because they wouldn't know what would be New Year themed. And Tracy's response was it could be anything. For example, I can't remember her exact words, but for example, it could be something that you want to focus on, a technique you want to focus on or improve on in the new year. So that gave me an idea then. I've got a few techniques that I want to improve on this year, or techniques I haven't even really tried yet, one of them being beach themes. So I had an idea to make a beach theme picture. I've got this mould which is actually a shaker mould. These are shaker numbers, and I thought that I could use the numbers 2026 and put them at the top of my beach theme to look like clouds. So I've started by putting the numbers mould on top of the frame mould that I'm going to use for the picture to check the thickness of the numbers against what thickness my resin will be in the frame mould. And I do decide that I will need to underpour the numbers a little bit to make them not be sticking out. I decided to use alcohol ink to colour the resin, thinking that that will make the cloud-like look on the numbers better than other resin dyes, but I don't know if that's correct. I've been doing YouTube for about 8 months, resin for about 15 months, and it still hasn't sunk in with me what the difference is between alcohol ink and other types of dyes. It takes me a lot of research to learn something new, and it still hasn't sunk in. So if anybody can advise me on that, I'd be very grateful. And I forgot to say, the only reason I'm using this shaker mould is because I haven't got another mould that's got numbers on it, so there's not going to be a shaker element to this.
First pour of the morning, blue glass in the tray, tiny shells in my fingers, salt dream in the gray. Tracy said the circle, minus scenes on the screen. I sign my name and shimmer, let it cure like a dream. New year, new tide, let the waves decide. Slow hands, soft heart, ocean in my art, sherry heart on the shoreline, casting hopes in the shine. New year, new tide, let the waves decide. Let the waves decide. White foam on the edges, sand caught in the light, little gold for the sunrise, turning clear into bright. Voices in the distance, friends I've never seen.
Okay, and on to demold, and clearly I'm going to have to make another two. Now, as it happens, because of underpouring them, I haven't managed to get them all the same thickness. I end up deciding I will need to make another number 6 as well. And also I decide to make the solid pieces in the middle of the 6 and the 0. I put the 2 and the 0 that I'm keeping onto the frame moulds that I'm going to use, just to start planning out where I'm going to put them. I've got this set of 3, and I was originally going to use the longest one to make a bigger picture, but decided that that's too thin and doesn't let my numbers go up high enough to look like they're in the sky. So I choose one that's thinner left to right but taller. It's still not big enough, but it's all I've got to work with, unfortunately. And there I'm pointing out that I have filled the inners to the 0 and 6. And so now I'm actually just going to make a base layer with some clear, so I'm going to fill the sides and fill it high enough that it comes over the centre display area, just enough to make a thin layer, and go around the edges with a stick to lift any bubbles, and then I'll use my heat gun to pop those bubbles. I've started preferring to use a heat gun nowadays for some reason. And now that the base layer has cured, I'm putting my numbers back on. However, I have got two issues. Firstly, I didn't account for a layer of resin when I initially put the numbers on the mould to check if I would need to underpour them. So I haven't underpoured them enough. And also, I haven't got them all the same thickness. So some numbers will be fully embedded, others are going to pop out a little bit. I'm not going to make them again. I could have to make them 10 times before I get it right. So now I need to secure the numbers in place, and I decide at first to try using my Green Stuff World Glue. I've only just bought this, it's my first time using it. Now, there is an issue that I'm putting the underpoured side down. Therefore, there is a dip in the number, which means there is not full contact with the base layer of resin. And I don't know whether that is the issue, so I had to put more glue on to kind of make it flood those underpoured areas, or whether it was just glue was not the right way to go. Anyway, does glue not work well for sticking resin to resin, maybe? So this doesn't work out too well, and I end up using UV resin and just curing it from the underside. So now to making the actual beach theme. I have put them numbers crooked on purpose, by the way. So starting with some sand in some resin, I decide to fill approximately the bottom third of the mould. At this stage, I'm realising the mould isn't big enough to be able to do the full effect that I want to do, which I'll explain later. It's not tall enough. I did toy with the idea of doing a mould on its side. So imagine the right hand side being the bottom, so that makes the mould taller, but then I wouldn't fit the numbers in. And as you can see, I've propped it up there because I don't want the sand to flow too far up the mould. And I'm using the ocean white pigment for making the froth. And I think this is a good time to remind you that this is part of the New Year collaboration. The playlist will be linked in my description. Please go and check out all of the other creations. There are no rules regarding channel size, so you could have some very experienced large channels in there, as well as smaller channels like myself. And it doesn't have to be resin either, any craft was welcome. And off camera I'm shaking up some more colours for making the sea, and I can't remember whether I intended to do two colours for the sea, so graduate one colour into the other for the sea, or whether I intended one colour to be for the sea and one to be for the sky. However, because the mould is so small, I end up putting the blue up in the sky area anyway. And I'm very sorry, but I've got a terrible memory. I think those were alcohol inks as well, based on the way that that blue is reacting.
First pour of the morning, blue glass in the tray, tiny shells in my fingers, salt dream in the gray. Tracy said the circle, minus scenes on the screen. I I sign my name in shimmer, let it cure like a dream. New year, new tide.
So after putting the green on top of the sand, as in above the sand, I'm now putting a little bit on top of the top edge of the sand to make it look like it's coming up onto the beach.
Hopes in the shine. New year, new tide. Let the waves decide. Let the waves decide.
And blending the blue and green together.
White foam on the edges, sand caught in the light. Little gold for the sunrise, turning clear into bright. Voices in the distance, friends I've never seen. All our coasts together, flowing in between. New year, new tide, let the waves decide. Slow hands, soft heart, ocean in my heart.
And the mould is not quite full, so I'm making some more blue to add from the top because I've got more than enough green.
Let the waves decide. Breathe in, breathe out. Watch the colors settle down. Let the sea inside the frame carry every hidden sound. Every piece a quiet wish. Every line.
And now for the fun part, adding the white. I have sort of made beach themes before, before I did YouTube, but I didn't do the white. I just did the sand and the sea colours. This is my first time actually putting white on and trying to make it look like waves. Now, as you can see, I put the white at the top of the sand, so blowing it upwards is making it look like there is wave, then sea, then sand. So I do another line of white lower down on the sand to hopefully make it look like the wave is actually crashing against the sand.
First pour of the morning, blue glass in the tray, tiny shells in my fingers, salt dream in the gray. Tracy said the circle, minus scenes on the screen. I sign my name in shimmer, let it cure like a dream. New year, new tide, let the waves decide. Slow hands.
So what I'm explaining now is how, if the mould had been taller, my original intention was to make it look like there were small clouds reaching up to a big number cloud. So if there was more room, then above the waves there would have been smaller dots of whiteness growing in size as they got higher until they reached the numbers. Also, at this point, you can see how my numbers are different thicknesses, but the numbers are just an optional addition to make this become a New Year collaboration video. The main focus of this video is to demonstrate that I want to do more beach themes and learn and improve on my beach themes. So hopefully you will agree this is still a successful project. Thank you for watching. I hope you've liked the video. If you have, please don't forget to hit the like button. If you've got any suggestions on how I can improve, please let me know in the comments. If you haven't subscribed already, I'd be really grateful if you would. And thank you to everybody who supported me in 2025, including Tracy from Mini Scenes GB and everybody in the Friendship Express collaboration. I hope everybody had a good Christmas and are having a good start to the new year. Thank you again for watching, and I hope to see you again in my next video. Bye bye for now.